I had so much fun leaning into my fandom after Wisconsin's 27-10 victory over Illinois on Saturday night that I'm back for more. I'm back to do it again in a little venture I like to call State Street Sports. And you all know what I'm looking forward to because you're looking forward to it as well. It is time to take back Paul Bunyan's axe and bring it back to where it belongs. Madison, Wisconsin. I've got a lot of great memories of this rivalry over the years because I got a lot of memories of W's. When I was growing up, 14 straight wins in this series for the Badgers from 2004 to 2017. My teens were full of Wisconsin wins over Minnesota. I was 13 years old in 2004 when that streak started. And it may be like in my upbringing, through middle school and into high school and early college, it wasn't really as big of a rivalry because Wisconsin just kind of had that expectation that they were going to win. Like the game against Minnesota, when we were talking about big matchups or important games, at the beginning of the year, in the late spring, into the summer, and of course into fall camp, Minnesota was not the first game certainly mentioned because of the success, because of where Wisconsin's program was compared to where Minnesota's program was, especially like 2009, 2010, of course, 2011, 2012, right in that area. Wisconsin was really high and Minnesota was not. Two games really stand out to me, growing up, really taking in this rivalry. 2005, a battle of ranked teams at the Metrodome in Minneapolis. Gophers leading by just a couple of points, punting from their own end zone, and it's blocked. Ben Strickland recovers the fumble for the touchdown, give the Badgers the win. The same Ben Strickland that is currently the head coach among one of the best high school football programs in Division I in Wisconsin, that being the De Pere Redbirds up there near Green Bay. How about 2019? You got number 8 Minnesota having their best season in, I don't know how many years. And you've got the 12th ranked Badgers. College game day is in town. It's in Minneapolis. It's cold. You got rain. You've got sleet. That was the same day as my sister's wedding. I made sure to make it out to college game day on campus there in Dinkytown. But we know what happened in the end. We know what happened. We know what a Badger can do to a Gopher hole. And, they destroyed it on that particular day where they ran all over Minnesota in a convincing win to propel them to a Big Ten West title and the Big Ten championship game. But now fast forwarding to the present, it's a little bit of a different story, isn't it? The Badgers have lost 3 of the last 4 Axe games, and they're looking to turn the corner in this rivalry and maybe start a new streak. Turning the corner. That's something that I talked about after Saturday night's win against Illinois. And these are two teams that are feeling very different right now, aren't they? Turning the corner is what the Badgers are doing, having won 2 out of their last 3, and those 2 wins were against ranked teams at the time of when they played them. On the other hand, for Minnesota, they've lost 3 of the last 4 games. They got demolished by Iowa. Yeah, Wisconsin did as well. We all know that. They got demolished by Oregon. Badgers played Oregon a lot tougher in Eugene than Minnesota certainly did. And then this last weekend's loss at Wrigley Field, it was the first win at Wrigley ever for Northwestern. They've played a handful of games there over the years, 38-35. And that's kind of where, when I talk about Minnesota and I'm previewing the opponent, I'm going to reference that game against the Wildcats a lot. This game upcoming for Luke Fickell is going to be real interesting because we've seen him play well as of late at home. Okay, you beat Washington in kind of a weather game at home. You had your most complete game maybe of the Luke Fickell era. They demolished Purdue, I think was that a year or 2 ago. Rutgers, they ran all over them as well. But when you're talking offense, defense, and special teams, Luke Fickell, for his entire tenure, He's been talking about complementary football. You see him at the podium each and every single week in Madison. Complementary football, complementary football, complementary football. And what did he say? That's complementary football. That's complete football. Can he follow it up? And now you're shifting and you're going on the road against a team that you certainly can be competitive against. Now, you had Oregon before the Washington game. You had Indiana, and they played well defensively in the first half, just a 10-7 game at half against the Hoosiers. But, of course, turnovers and a lot of things, and Indiana just being Indiana led to a 31-7 game when all was said and done. I'm really curious to see how Luke Fickell can handle now the success of this football team. Will they continue to build? We've seen Carter Smith. We're going to talk a lot about Carter Smith a little bit later on in this preview. Is he going to continue to take those steps up the ladder? Can you get him more confidence this week? Is this defense continuing to put out the great performances that they had? Or is there going to be a little bit of a letdown? I think this game is going to say a lot about Luke Fickell and this program. But I'm certainly more optimistic about the direction of Wisconsin football than I was just a handful of weeks ago. Okay, so let's talk more about Minnesota. There are multiple examples that this defense maybe isn't as good as you might think it might be, or isn't as good as maybe Minnesota defenses of the past. How about Northwestern going for 525 of total offense, 305 through the air? Preston Stone had a great game. I mean, Caleb Kamalafe, led the way on the ground. 220 for the Wildcats. Like they could basically do whatever they wanted to do throughout that entire football game. Northwestern was able to achieve a lot against Minnesota's corners. When I look at the Gophers in the secondary, a lot of people are going to look at Coy Parrish, rightfully so. A lot of people are going to look at Kerry Brown. They've got a really good safety tandem. So maybe avoid the middle of the field. Maybe if it's like 3rd and 10, don't throw like a 15 to 18 yard. Don't make Carter Smith throw a 15 to 18 yard dart over the middle. You got some aggressive safeties in the middle of the defense there for the Gophers. But the corners, they're not great. They're not great. Now, John Nestor was out against Northwestern. He's a starting corner for them. But Deontay McMillan, Zaquan Bryan, they both had under a 50 Pro Football Focus coverage grade against Northwestern. I look on the perimeter for Wisconsin. Now, this is certainly a Wisconsin passing attack that is not going to they're not going to push you vertically, right? You like their offense right now is really working within the tools that they have in their toolbox, maybe is a good way to put it. Like against Illinois, they ran the football really well with Darian Dupree. They kind of mixed in the short to medium passing game. Jeff Grimes put Carter Smith in a really good situation. One read here, maybe short, maybe the second read medium, and you have a little bit of the check down game. But when I look at the receivers out on the edge, when I look at the Vinny Anthonys, when I look at the Eugene Hiltons, when I look at the Tretch Kekahunas maybe coming out of the slot, I think there's a lot of opportunity to create space. I think there's a lot of opportunity to be able to get open against these Minnesota corners. So I think for Wisconsin offensively, and I'm going to get into more details and maybe more stats to be able to explain my point here, but for Wisconsin, I think there's an emphasis on the run game. There's an emphasis on doing that and then attacking Minnesota at the corner, attacking them out on the boundary as well. Like that first drive, what was that, 16 plays, 80 yards, whatever it was against Illinois, it was just textbook. It was exactly with the personnel you have right now in Madison. It was exactly how you need to call it. It was exactly how you need to set it up. That is what we kind of want to be able to duplicate against this Minnesota defense going forward. Now, I want to talk, I'm kind of going to jump around here on my notes. Let's talk about Minnesota's run defense. I'm going to talk about them coming off the edge in just a minute because I think the strength of the Gophers on defense is their pass rush. But more on that in just a moment. But this is a run defense. I mean, you can say what you want about the Northwestern game. You can say what you want about this opponent and that opponent. But there's multiple examples that you can run, and you can run on the interior, and you can push Minnesota back. I mean, just Oregon rushed for 179 yards, 6 yards per carry in that Friday night game. We just talked about Northwestern, 5.6 yards a carry. Michigan State rushed for 156 yards. Now, it's 3.8 yards per carry, but a late 85-yard run from Elijah Tautoliver set up Michigan State. Late in that game against Michigan State, there were big plays on consecutive drives that allowed the Spartans to kind of remain in that football game. That was also a Michigan State team, not very good, threw for over 300 yards against Minnesota, so I'll say that. Purdue earlier this season rushed for over 250 yards, over 6 yards per carry for the Boilermakers of Purdue. I mean, Antoine Raymond at Rutgers rushed 26 times, 161 yards, over 6 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. So it doesn't matter if it's Rutgers, if it's Purdue, if it's Michigan State, if it's Northwestern, if it's Oregon. It doesn't matter who it is. Minnesota has had a little bit of trouble slowing down the run consistently, stopping the run. Let the big boys eat in the interior. Run over Joe Brunner, Darian Dupree. Can he have his second great game in a row? We know there's still injuries. Gideon Atuka, I don't think that's going to happen in this game. You're probably going to see some Jackson Aker, more heavily involved like he was against Illinois. So it all starts up front. It all starts with an effective run game. It all starts with Darian Dupree. And then you can kind of work the passing game and you can attack the corners kind of coming off of that. And then maybe you can have a little bit of a better day throwing the ball, a healthy run game, just like I said after the game on Saturday. A healthy run game is going to make life a whole lot easier for Carter Smith going on the road, likely in some weather, rain, cold, snow this week. Saturday, I think, is near a 70% of precipitation as well. And I think the weather could maybe factor into this game a little bit as well. But maybe the biggest key, okay, if you're going to run the football, great. If you have successful, but when it comes to the passing game, when it comes to balancing out against Minnesota's defense, you got to be able to contain this aggressive pass rush, okay? I mean, you look at Anthony Smith, you look at Carter Menz, you look at Jackson Howard. There's been a couple of games this season where they're racking up 7 sacks in a game. I mean, Nebraska game was one of them. Michigan State game, I believe, was another one. They're racking up 8 sacks in a game. When they're in the zone when it comes to a pass rush, they can wreak absolute havoc. They, as a team, they lead the Big Ten in sacks. They are second in the Big Ten in tackles for loss. But although they just had 1 sack against Northwestern, it's kind of skewed. Like, they have huge games, but then they have games where maybe the pass rush isn't as prevalent. I mean, Anthony Smith, 10.5 sacks. It leads the Big Ten this year. He's very much a power rusher, and he'll push you back. Carter Menz a little bit quicker. He's sitting there at 5.5 sacks game. Okay. We need to have a great game. Doesn't even need to be great. We need to have a good game, a serviceable game, a good enough to be dangerous type of game from Emerson Mandel. Okay, he kind of whiffed some blocks, did not look great against Illinois. There have been games where he's looked like a freshman offensive tackle. Okay, there's been games maybe earlier in the season. By the way, Emerson Mandel has played the most snaps of any offensive player for Wisconsin this season. But Emerson Mandel needs to be serviceable. You got Riley Molman, of course, an experienced tackle out on the other side. Those guys need to be good. I talked about the run game. The run game is one thing that can slow down an aggressive pass rush like Minnesota. It would not surprise me to see more quarterback run game, more read game as well, where you maybe don't instead have to focus on, blocking and getting these defensive ends out of the way, but instead now we're reading them and we're using our decision making to take these aggressive defensive ends out of the play. So if they're aggressive, they're bending down and they're taking the running back, that's when Carter Smith can pull in Jeff Grimes' system, and he can kind of create some stuff with his legs. If the Badgers can get Carter Smith going a little bit more, that's just an extra weapon. And now all of a sudden you have these Minnesota rush defensive ends a little bit on their heels a little bit. So it would not surprise me to see a lot of decision making, and you got to protect the football, especially if there's elements. Okay, that's going to be huge. Huge. You got to I've said it, I sound like a broken record probably, but continuing to set up Carter Smith for success and him protecting the football and not giving Minnesota extra possessions is going to be absolutely paramount throughout this matchup. But I believe that Wisconsin can have success. I think Tretch dragging across the middle of the field, I think there's a lot of openings. We saw last week what he can do in a catch and run type of situation. Hey, your buddy Lance is always good as well. Lance Mason at tight end. They've got some good pass catchers. I know Wisconsin's offense has kind of been dragged through the mud, rightfully so, this season, but there's guys that can catch and run. They can move the chains. They can kind of do some things. I want to go over to the other side of the ball. Minnesota on offense versus Wisconsin's defense. Of course, the Badgers are absolute menaces on defense right now. I don't know how it might sound controversial, but there's some teams in the top 25. There's some teams in the college football playoff bubble. Maybe even there's a couple of teams in the college football playoff up there or slated to be up there right now that might trade defenses with Wisconsin. I think they are that freaking good right now. I know a lot of people have their eyes on Mason Posa. Luke Fickell did say, he looked pretty good. That was after the game on Saturday, so I think that's a good sign to seeing the great freshman play against Minnesota. Okay, for the Gophers, I think, like Carter Smith continues to improve every week, and I love seeing that. Drake Lindsey is a better pocket passer. He's certainly not as mobile. Okay? If he gets time to throw the football, he's put up big numbers on some teams so far this season. Like if I'm Mike Tressel, if I'm Luke Fickell, I'm like, let's unleash. Let's attack these tackles. Let's bring pressure. I think Wisconsin can get pressure with their front group up there, with Mason Reiger, with Darrell Peterson, and they've kind of lined up Mason Posa kind of on the edge and pass rush type of stuff and kind of bring him to an outside linebacker type of spot. Like if you can get Darrell Peterson to have a follow-up performance from that 3-sack performance last week against Illinois, you're going to be liking what you got. Okay, I think a lot of people are going to be happy. Minnesota's offensive line, they've allowed 80 pressures, 50 hurries this year. That's about middle of the road in the Big Ten. To put it into perspective, Illinois, 89 pressures and 60 hurries. Wisconsin, for reference, has allowed 99 pressures and 62 hurries. So I think it's in the ballpark of somewhere where Illinois was, and Wisconsin was absolutely owning the Illini up front. So getting pressure with your front group, if that's not doing it consistently, maybe bringing it from the second level to get Drake kind of out of rhythm a little bit as well. But know that maybe if you bring pressure, you hope that it hits the majority of the time, because he can kind of connect on the deep ball to guys like Javon Tracy and Lemeke Brockington as well over the middle. Like, their receivers aren't like, none of their receivers are going to absolutely pop at you. You leave Ricardo Holman or maybe some of these corners on an island. I think for the most part, they're going to be okay. So bringing pressure, I think is going to be a strategy that this Wisconsin defense is going to employ, and I think they're probably going to have a good amount of success. But when I look at priorities for the Badgers defensively, I think the top priority has to be what I just mentioned: slow down the passing game. Because like this run game, yes, Darius Taylor is back healthy, but I mean, you look at these last two games when Darius has been healthy. Darius Taylor has 10 rushing attempts, I think when he's fully healthy, he's maybe one of the most talented running backs in the Big Ten Conference. But over these last two games, I mean, just like I said, 10 carries in each game. Drake Lindsey threw the ball 32 times against Oregon, and he threw the ball 30 times against Northwestern. Really, if you take that Nebraska game out of it, it's been a lot of that. It's been kind of a lot of flip from what we expect from a PJ Fleck team. Minnesota is throwing the ball down the field a little bit more. So, we'll see exactly the performance that we get out of the guys in the back end. De'Ani Hill got to play better than last week. But on the other hand, Jeremy Latimer, he was great. So let's get more out of that. So if you can get pressure, you get your corners and your defensive backs to be able to cover these Minnesota receivers, you keep that in check, I think you got a great chance. Because I think when you look at the Ben Bartons of the world, the Javier Suggs of the world, up front, you look at Brandon Lane, you look at those guys, they've been really good. I think part of the surge late in the season for Wisconsin has been that interior, the defensive line, how good they're playing. So you defend the pass well, you get pressure. I have confidence that they're going to be able to be good, if not great, against Minnesota and this rushing attack right now. I've got a lot of confidence in this defense and what they're doing. I mean, they've done it against a variety of opponents. All right, folks, that's my thoughts, in-depth preview on the matter. It is prediction time, folks. Wisconsin is ending the season winning 3 of their last 4 games and has all the momentum headed into 2026. Now, I think there's a possibility that if Wisconsin comes out on fire and if Wisconsin continues to take that next step on the ladder like they've been taking these last couple of games, there's a chance Wisconsin could not only come into Minneapolis and win, but they could control the Gophers. Like, I look offensively. Washington, although there was, weather certainly involved in that game, I think Washington is, they're a better offense than Minnesota. Illinois, I think they're more talented offensively than Minnesota is. But going on the road, it's a little bit of a different animal. There's going to be some weather involved. I'm maybe giving Minnesota a little bit of a road boost in my score prediction. I think the Badgers pull it out, though. Give me Wisconsin 20, Minnesota 17. So that is a cover of the 1.5 point spread in favor of the Gophers. That's an outright win. So give me plus 1.5 for old Bucky. And at 37.5, that is a 0.5 point on the under. I've got some confidence, but this is time to prove it. I've been listening to the Scary Alvarez podcast, and he said this last week it was confirmation. Right? If that win against Washington was kind of like, oh, we're kind of starting an upward trend. And like, oh, is this really going to stick? I agree that last Saturday was confirmation. Now for me, this game against Minnesota is establishing a new standard. Establishing that this is how we're going to play week in and week out. I think the Badgers get it done 20-17 against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Those are my thoughts on this game, Badger fans. Leave your thoughts and your predictions in the comments below. State, Street, Sports, more to come for the Wisconsin fans out there. I'm having the time of my life talking about my squad that I've been rooting since I was just a little Ted. All right, until next time, we'll see you on Wisconsin.